Time to start editing our photos. The first thing that we always do is learn how to crop our photos. First, if you want to go into the editor, just click on a photo. It's going to bring it up full screen. If you're in the album view, just go to the specific album and then click on the photo and then click this adjustments or this edit button up here. So to crop a photo, just click this crop button in the top right. And here there are presets. If you click this button in the top right for the aspect ratios. So the free aspect ratio will allow you to just click and drag and create any sort of aspect that you want. Once you're done clicking and dragging the corners, you can click and move the photo itself to put it in the crop. And the cool thing is it has this sort of grid that allows you to use sort of like the rule of thirds, placing Will on the third line if you want. Now I'm going to edit this as a square, which is perfect for social media or sort of an profile image. So I'm going to use this like so. And then when you do this, you have this rotation guide on the right side. If you click and drag up or down, you can rotate the image, and the grid again helps you level horizons, straighten out things, make sure the eyes are flat and level, perfectly like that. You can also just completely rotate your image with this rotate button up here. Then click done. Next, you have these filters that you can see here that if you just click through these filters, it applies sort of a manual filter. You're probably aware or comfortable with using filters if you use an app like Instagram, where you can just pop on a filter. You have the strength of the filter down here to decrease or increase the strength of that filter. If you want to go back and undo any changes, just click original up here. I want to show you the manual adjustments you can make in Google Photos. You have this sort of slider tab up here, and you have these sliders that you can drag left to right for light, which is the exposure, making your photo brighter or darker. You have your color, which is your saturation, making it less saturated, all black and white, or more saturated. You also have this pop filter, which is sort of like a clarity filter. If you're aware and use Lightroom, it sharpens things, it adds more detail. For portraits, it gives this sort of grungy feel, which I don't like, but it could be your style. You'll also see that we have these drop-down menus next to light and color. This gives you more fine-tuning adjustments that, again, are similar to what you would use in something like Lightroom or Photoshop. So instead of making an overall light adjustment, you can adjust specific parts of your images. So you have an overall exposure, which is basically making the entire image brighter or darker. You have contrast, which makes, if you take it to the right, it makes the dark parts darker, the light parts lighter, making it more contrasty. Sliding to the left makes it less contrasty. The darks become lighter, the lights become darker, a more flat image. Then you have these 4 sliders for highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks, and these adjust individual parts of the image. So the highlights will just adjust the highlights, shadows just sort of the darker parts. And so for this image, I want to bring it up just a little bit. The whites, I'm going to bring up just a little bit too, and then the blacks, dragging up makes it more contrasty. Dragging to the left brings up the blacks, making it a little bit lighter. So something like that looks a little bit better to me. And then you have this vignette. Dragging to the right will increase the vignette, sort of focusing your attention on the center of the frame. Great for portraits, great for different styles of photography. Not something I add to all of my photos, but vignettes are pretty cool for focusing the attention on the center of your photo. Cool, so you can play around with those sort of more advanced adjustments under light. Then under color, we also have more adjustments. So I'm going to reset the color slider and go through each of these. Saturation is the color vibrance, basically, of all the colors in the frame. So everything's going to become more vibrant and colorful if you drag to the right, or become less saturated dragging to the left. Warmth is how you can actually adjust the white balance of your image. Dragging to the right will make it more warm, to the left more cool. So for this image, it's a little bit cool, and so for this one in particular, I would drag to the right a little bit to get the colors to look a little bit more natural. tint is going from green to magenta, depending on the lighting situation. If you're shooting under fluorescent lights or different types of lights, you might have sort of a green tint to your photos, and you want to combat that by adding some magenta to it, or you can use it just to give it some sort of cool style. The skin tone slider will increase or decrease the saturation of your skin tones. So if you just want to make someone's skin tone pop a little bit more, drag it to the right. The other thing you can do is drag the saturation to the right, which brings up the colors for the entire image. But when you do that, sometimes skin tones don't look that good, because when you're adding too much saturation to people's skin, especially like Caucasian or light skin, you get all this red in there, and that looks a little awkward. So if we drag down the skin tone now, this decreases the saturation of the skin, but we're leaving the saturation of all of the other colors itself in the background. So this is going to be a lot of your yellows, your oranges, and some red that you're affecting with skin tone. And then deep blue is adjusting the blues. So if you want to make those blues in the background a little bit darker, more contrasty, drag it up. Less saturated, less contrasty, drag it to the right. So I like, especially with this image, making them a little bit more contrasty and saturated. And so those are the manual adjustments you can make with the light and color sliders. And now you're ready to share this with the world, which will cover some options for downloading and sharing in the next lesson.